Hi there, and welcome back to another edition of ScaleUp Radio, the podcast inspired by the entrepreneurial scale-up system and designed to make navigating our scale-up journeys that little bit easier by learning from others' experiences. I'm Kevin Brent, and this week on the show, I'm joined by Hannah Springett. Hannah's the CEO and founder of HLabs, and we dive into the dynamic world of digital agency scaling. And in a short 59 minutes, we unpack HLabs' remarkable journey from a one-person show when Hannah set it up to a thriving team of 42 in 3 short years. And we discover her key takeaways, such as strategic hiring of passionate graduates, the transformative impact that an external business coach has had, and the global talent acquisition strategy that Hannah's used to fuel their growth. And Hannah shares her insights into maintaining a vibrant remote-first culture, navigating client relationships from publishers to direct brands, and some of the pivotal decisions that have shaped HLabs' trajectory. So join us as we explore the challenges, triumphs, and the exciting future vision of having a global team in every major time zone for 24/7 production capability. And make sure you don't miss any future episodes by subscribing to ScaleUp Radio wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. And you can also nominate a guest for ScaleUp Radio if you know someone with an interesting scale-up story, and you can find out how in the show notes. So listen on for some really valuable lessons and actionable strategies from Hannah Springett, exclusively on ScaleUp Radio. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm delighted today to be joined by Hannah Springett, who is the CEO and founder of HLabs. So, Hannah, great to see you.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here. Really looking forward to all of your wild and amazing questions. And I hope I can articulate myself with all of the professional attitude that I want to come across, but that will probably go out of the window very, very shortly.
Well, if you manage that, you'll be doing a lot better than me based on the couple of attempts at an introduction that I've just tried. So I'm sure.
No worries.
They're brilliant. Good. So HLabs. Hannah, tell us all about HLabs. What is it you do? What are you all about?
So this elevator pitch changes every time I do it. So let's try and make this as close to the website as we can. We are a full service design agency focused on creating digital experiences using no code technology. Now, there's a lot of buzzwords in there. I totally get that. For every audience, that might mean something completely different. But no code, I'll start with that one because that's probably the most difficult terminology if you haven't heard of it. No code tech allows you to do website development without the traditional long elongated process of web development for something like WordPress or bespoke HTML code. So no code tools allow you to jump onto online software solutions, and it empowers the designer to take their designs through to development without needing that traditional developer kind of role in your business. And so I started as a graphic designer, and one of my frustrations when I was, back working at e-com agencies or PR agencies or design agencies is that I would love designing the work. And then you'd get to this point where they're like, okay, we're handing this over to the dev team now. And that design would disappear for 6 months to a year or a year and a half. And then you would see that website come back and you're like, well, what's that? I didn't design that. So one of my frustrations was that I couldn't see my visual executions done to what I had in my head. So it's that idea of like vision and reality. And I think no code tools have allowed designers to execute their technical vision to make websites without the need for developers. So I used to work at a no-code technology called Seros. So I was tech side for a bit. And then I left there to start HLabs because I didn't want to sell one bit of tech anymore. I wanted to sell creative and technology solutions and consult on what things people should use, what fits within their existing tech stack. Do they need to use some new tech? Do they want to, cut some corners and save some money? Do they want to be more efficient? So all of those things, I didn't want to just be a designer or just work for a tech company anymore. I wanted to do all of it. So me being that kind of person that likes wearing a lot of hats, which I can imagine a lot of the people you interview starting out new businesses in that you have to wear a lot of hats.
Absolutely.
We started a design agency. We had partnerships with technologies, and then they started referring work to us, and we were like, oh, there's quite a lot of work coming our way here. So we've expanded the technologies that we use. And so we are platform agnostic. So if you come to us, Kevin, and you go, I need a website, we'll help navigate through what tech you have already, what we can add on, what we can work and collaborate with. And then again, if you want some content on top of that, we can throw that into the mix. So we want to be a full service agency to allow you to make amazing digital content. And we started just before COVID, 3 weeks before COVID, that was.
You launched a business 3 weeks before COVID?
Yeah, that was terrifying. So I remember being in the Vogue house in London, because they were my first client, and I could hear all these conversations going around about COVID and having to shut the office, and I was like, oh, this is my first freelance gig, what are we going to do? But actually for HLabs in particular, COVID meant that everyone had to pivot their budgets from event marketing or things that were in person to going digital. So we hit a bit of a boom with this. So it allowed us to expand those digital services, find more enterprise clients that were looking for reliable partners, and we kind of grew very, very quickly in COVID. And that's probably because I was sat at home with my mum, not able to do anything else. So that was probably built into it. But yeah, we offer a range of creative services, whether that be web design, illustration, animation. We now do editorial copywriting as well, and a bit of 3D. So over the course of 4 years, we've gone from just doing design and build on no code to offering all of these other services to make your websites just more engaging all round. So that was probably the longest explanation of we make websites.
Yeah, and I think we got half of your journey and your story in there as well. So yeah, and I've hardly had to say a word so far. So that's excellent. So if we go back to the no code bit, then you explained in there how it helps you and your designers and building the business. Essentially, I think we can see that. What about for the clients? What difference does it make for the clients?
It's time and money. And look, every client wants something faster. Every client wants something cheaper. And we found that positioning ourselves using no code instead of hard coded websites meant that our timelines were just, more competitive than, our competitors really. So when partners come to us, like we managed to focus our types of websites that we do to short-term campaign sites. So there's obviously two types of websites you can do. Like we're not talking about like rebuilding like a government gateway type of website. We're not talking about taking on BBC's infrastructure or anything like that. We do very short-lived, short turnaround campaign sites or published stories, things like that. And so the thing is, with those stories that might be showing a new product or might be advertising an event, or they've got a shelf life, and companies want to be able to create them as quickly as they ideate them, but also they'll do a job maybe for 6 weeks, maybe up to 6 months, but after that they're pivoting on to the next thing. So the investment for that client, they don't want to, pay a developer to you can't take a year to make that website because it's going to be redundant very shortly. Yep. So we managed to get our timelines to a point where that was our USP. And at the very beginning, like I took the frustrations I used to have being an agency where they used to go, oh, we can't start that for 3 months, or we can't start that just yet. And I was like, well, why not? You should be able to start it tomorrow. So one of our USPs at the moment is that we can start any project the day after you brief us, if all of your paperwork is done. Yeah. So we have 24-hour lead times to get going on something. And we managed to kind of productize the websites that we did. So if you want a simple landing page, we have managed to do a single landing page in 48 hours. My team are going to be roaring at this, going like, please you can do that.
Please don't promise that.
Yeah, don't promise that every time. But we just realized that there was this gap in the market to create websites super fast with a design quality, whether it's based on templates or not. Users want to have something done in a couple of weeks, and we take all of the pressure off them because we supply them a whole team. So it's not just a freelancer coming in to work with you. You get allocated a creative director, a project manager, a producer, designer. So it's normally a team of 4 will come and work on your project and deliver it in super quick turnaround time. So yeah, it's super quick and cheaper. If you're only paying by the day and we do it in less days, then you can imagine that is much cheaper for the end client.
Very good. So really nice, clear differentiation that you've managed to build up there, from starting almost with the no code idea, but then what does that turn into in terms of our competitive differentiation? Very good. And what's your typical client? You mentioned that there tend to be these short turnaround projects, specific needs. So what's your typical sort of client?
So if I try and do this for everyone that's listening, that's obviously working in that kind of scale up situation, and what you do first is, when I started the business, I needed to do what I knew. And that was, I used to work for a company called Seros. They are a no-code platform. It allows you to kind of drag and drop your design elements and press a button, and it makes it into code, which you can put into a website. So obviously working with Seros from the very beginning of their startup journey, I think I was the 12th employee, and I saw it go from 12 employees up to 350. So I kind of used my experience there to see a company grow right from the beginning. And so I had a lot of Seros clients that were still paying for the tech, but they needed the expertise and a designer just to come and do it for them. And I think this was the gap in the market that I started when I mentioned Vogue, is that my first client, Vogue, called me up and said, we pay for Seros. They used to be my client when I was that side of it. And they said, like, oh, can you come in for a couple of months and help us with our products and our testing on Seros, because you know it better than anything else. And I was like, well, this is perfect. So I kind of became a sort of Seros freelancer to start with. And then working with Vogue, it was about finding bits of content that could go on their website instead of entire campaign pages. It was just modules of content. So just to explain that in a little bit more detail, like every website will have a back-end CMS where you might create a new article, where you might add an image at the top, add a title, and then your body copy. So the publishers have extensive CMSs that have these glorified, blogs, basically, it's content. And what Seros, allowed you to do was inject a small bit of code to make a quiz or a game or a soundbite or an infographic that was animated. So we kind of spent the first 6 months developing a lot of templates for these smaller modules of content. And it was that first year, it was pretty much, I think 90% of our revenue was based on Seros, because that was what I'd spent the last 4 years doing. And so looking at that, it was quite clear on my CV that I'd set up something new, and I started putting some examples out. And Seros's biggest competitor got in touch and said, oh, we see that you don't work for Seros anymore. Would you like to do some work with us and look at our tool? Like, can you play around and give us some feedback? We'd love to know what you think. So we started working with Vev. So we took the same partnership and did it with another no-code tool. And then going into the start of probably like middle of year 2, I spoke to a Webflow expert, and they sold me on Webflow and said, like, well, if you've mastered these two, you've got to use Webflow. So try that out. And so we built a partnership with Webflow. And so if we go back to your question, which was what type of clients do we have? It started in publishing. And I was an expert in branded content with publishers. So it became the same thing, is that I worked with Vogue to start with. I had existing clients before, working in my Seros days at Red Bull and at Time Out magazine. Gradually, like, each of those clients, they were coming to us for just the creative execution, and I was based on their time zone in the UK versus the US. And so we just started to, sort of tot up these publishers that wanted to work with us. And it was all around taking templates that we had fixed prices and fixed lead times on each of these templates. And this is why I said, Kev, that we could start working on something 24 hours later. If you take something from a template and say, okay, we want this type of campaign, we want this type of functionality, it's for this brand, can you style it up? We'd already practiced how long that would take. So it just stops their sales team needing to check in with me to scope that. So it was effectively the publishers were doing the selling, we were just doing the doing. So in year 2, we realized that we didn't want to work just with publishers and we needed to extend that reach to other types of client. So we thought, like, how could we replicate this to another world that I'm from, which is agencies? So we started working with Emperor, who are still our biggest agency client. And we created a similar model for them, is that we found what they do day in, day out, but we templated it. So theirs is annual reports. So we started doing these single page annual reports, simple, medium, complex, put a lead time on it, put a, solution on there so that their sales team could go, Hannah's team have got this if we sell it. So it just meant that, again, they were selling, we were doing. Obviously, they were taking, some nice hefty margins on their part, but we were still doing it, to make enough to cover ourselves. And that's still predominantly where our revenue comes from. And I think now we've got to year 4, we're about to go into year 5, we've realized that, those hefty margins that everyone's taking, it'd be quite nice to have those higher limits on stuff. So we've started focusing more on going direct to brands, so that we don't have an agency or a publisher in the middle, but we're starting to work with them direct, and we're kind of more confident now that we can go in and talk to these people and play amongst the big agencies now and still be considered. So we have 3 different client base, still publishing, still agencies, but also brands. We're trying to push direct to enterprise level brands now as well.
Great. And certainly from what I've understood with the publishing and with what you described about, say, the company reports with that agency, it's content rich.
Yes.
Right. So again, with your going direct to brands, then companies that are content rich, then that have something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Really interesting.
And we just love content, and I think that's where we've been struggling over finding the right messaging for our website. We're still working on our marketing, because a lot of our work, with other agencies that are listening, most of agency work comes from referrals, or someone moves from one company to another company and they trust you well enough to keep going with the work. But this year we're really trying to broaden our sales team to focus on those brands, but we're trying to work out what the messaging sticks. So we've kind of said, we're experts in interactive storytelling, we're experts in creating digital experiences, we'll increase your engagement for campaigns. But again, for every single brand, it's very, very different. But content is at the heart of it. And I think we started year 4 going, okay, well, do we just want to sell web design? Because every year the publishers are like, oh, what else can you do? What else can you do? And, that renewal process of keeping your referrals happy is that you have to keep dangling that next carrot in front of them, right? So, it happened by accident that we hired a senior designer, Drew, and he was a really great illustrator. And so it just happened that he'd done some illustrations for us, and a couple of campaigns we were showing had illustrations on, and the publisher clients were like, oh, can you do bespoke illustrations for us? And we were like, yeah. How much do we charge for that? No idea. So you go away and do some research, but you do it as an add-on. And now you'll see on the website, we have got a whole illustration division. We've got Drew is now our illustration director, not just a senior. And we have 2 other illustrators on the team full-time. And then if it gets more crazy than that, we hire freelancers to bolster that up. But we saw in that gap between year 2 and year 3, that illustration, we sold 279% more projects with illustration on it just in a single year. So we kind of followed where the content trends were. And yes, it kind of got away from doing the functionality that I'm used to doing with the actual tech, but we are linking that back to no code we've just started a new partnership. And for any geeky people listening, you should check out Rive app. We've just started working with them, and they create, it's a tool where you can upload your illustrations, make it animate and interact, but it's super lightweight. So if you want a higher performing website, you can get beautiful illustrations that move on cursor movement or on scroll, just really beautiful content that is super lightweight, that's normally seen as very heavy if you have to use it in video format. So we're trying to link it together with websites and storytelling, but we can also just do one-off assets if you would like as well. So it's always thinking about how else can you sell that, how can you package that up with your existing clients, or how can you sell that to new clients as that little biscuit to get them in the door.
You clearly love what you do. What do you love most about running doing HLab compared with when you were working before?
Oh my God, there's so much of it. I think to any existing person that I've worked at another company with, it's taken 4 years to realise I was awful at being managed. Oh my God, so bad. I think that's a lot of founders will admit that. I've apologised to those people that I was a pain in the arse, to work with. But I think knowing what I love doing, putting all of my passion towards something that benefits me and the team is great. And I think that the variety of work that we have is much better now than when I was working tech side or agency side, because they both have different things. When I worked at the tech side, it felt very salesy and I was always having to work within the constraints of that particular technology. When I was at the agency, I was a senior designer and I wanted to be involved in marketing. I wanted to be involved with the clients. I wanted to be involved with, growing the team and training and things like that. So I think like when you're a new founder, it's allowing yourself to choose all the bits that you want to do, and then you start hiring people to do the bits that you're not so good at. And I think I get a lot of reward from the team. We started with a very young graduate team. So in 2020, when I started the business, I also was teaching at Condé Nast College at their university, which they kind of were trying to get students directly into Condé Nast as a brand. Yeah. And I was teaching on the MA for interactive storytelling at Westminster University. So I kind of did some guest lecturing and really loved kind of using my knowledge to influence the kind of younger creatives coming out of university. And it just became that through teaching, we hired a body of graduates that have now had three and a half years experience with me, but we gave a lot of opportunities out at the very beginning. So I'm the oldest person in the company. The average age of my company is 24, I think. So we've got a very young agency, but everyone brings passion and energy, new ideas, and definitely keep me on my toes about what I should be doing with social media and what ones we should be trying and doing something else. Because even they make me feel old and I'm only 35. Do you know what I mean? So I've been told that like I shouldn't be using Instagram and I should only be using TikTok and things like that. But again, like I'm a generation out, so I'm getting the recce information from the right people. But I think building the graduate team was super rewarding for me. I'd never really managed a team that big, and we went from just me to, I think it got busiest at the end of year 3 and we had 42 people, which was crazy growth in that amount of time. And we had a lot of people that I came onto the team that were doing line management for the first time. So year 3 was definitely about us figuring out how to do that and how to get most out of the team. And we have tried to take everything in agency and tech world that, I thought HR could be better, or, what did I struggle with when I was learning as a graphic designer, like what used to frustrate me. And I think a lot of that was being put in front of clients, that a lot of the bigger agencies, if you're part of a cog in the machine, as it were, you would do the work, but never present it. And that used to be one thing that drove me up the wall, that I want to hear the client's feedback. I want to know what I'm changing the next day rather than having someone else present work that I'd worked on. So at HLabs, we definitely believe in anyone on the team being on a call with a client and being part of it. And a lot of our project managers, started as graduates with us, and they run accounts that are over £500,000 now, and they're 24. So there's, if you give people the responsibility, then the accountability wins out, I think, if you're willing to believe in people and train them up.
That's nice. So it's because that is tremendous growth over that period of time, 42 people. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest challenges that we hear from entrepreneurs all the time is it's all around people. So, it's kind of what you said is give people within the framework of the business and the guidelines, the values, those sort of things, give them empower them really to do the right thing, and let them benefit from, if they're passionate about having produced a design, let them get the benefit of presenting that to
talk about it, because I'm not going to be passionate about something that I've not lived on the work for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and I won't know the nuances to the decisions they've made to do certain things. So we definitely believe in that. And I think also I wanted to kind of challenge and this is going to be cliche, every founder wants to see themselves as doing something completely unique. But I think with our agency, we really wanted to try and tackle some of the stereotypes about hierarchy and people knowing everything and selling things in certain ways, because realistically with new tech, it changes every 6 months. Like we certainly weren't, using AI on every project before. Like we've changed some of our workflows, we've made efficiencies. And I think by having, younger project managers and younger designers, like we've been able to pivot quickly because they haven't got 20 years of experience doing something where they're set in their ways. Yeah. You just go, that's not working for us, so let's change it. Or a client's not, buying as many of those types of templates. So why are we doing that? Let's scrap it. I think through all of the business coaching I've had as well, I think it's that ability to just go, you know what, this isn't working. Why are we doing this? Like, so we challenge the whole team to ask, like, why are they doing a task? And I know that sounds ridiculous, but so instead of micromanaging, like if any of the team at any point want to go, why have I been asked to do that? There should be an answer, rather than just, oh, that's how we've always done it. I think that's the way. So onboarding has become a much more flexible thing with the team to kind of just go, okay, well, we want to be a different agency. Okay, do we book a designer 3 weeks in advance? No, because all of our requests from our American clients change overnight. So we do all of our resource allocation on the morning of the day. And that's where we can pivot and put new projects in, delay certain clients that haven't gone back to us, because we want there to be that kind of agile, collaborative nature, that we're the in-house team that's outsourced. Like we want to collaborate with our clients, that they can say, oh, we've got 2 hours of work here, but it might not come until Friday. Or they'll get a message and go, oh, it's actually coming today. Can you just do that change now? And I think that was one of the things in traditional agency formats, where you're planning everything so far in advance that clients change their mind all the time. So us being more agile it was another USP to go, oh, we can change our whole project plan overnight and we've still got resource in the morning. Let's go. That's been good.
Which to some people listening might be going, crikey, that just sounds like chaos. How do you keep control of that?
How do we keep control of that? I think my head of ops would probably say, yeah, it is chaos sometimes. But I think the rigid processes we've started very early on. It was interesting, again, working at an agency, working tech side, is that I was at 3 years with both the tech company I worked with and the agency I was working with. And in those 3 years, you get to a point where you learn the processes. Whereas when I started, I kind of already knew what processes were a bit broken when I worked in those places, and went, okay, well, this is what we need to know before we kick off a project. Trello was a really game-changing thing for us in year 2, I think it was. Yeah. Working with Condé Nast, they kind of helped us develop it, really. That they said, like, we want to have overnight instructions given to your team. So it was as simple as having each Trello card was a project. The American client could put a red flag on any single project that they needed tweaks on. So first thing in the morning, we'd get back and make sure we were prioritizing those particular cards. And we kind of knew over the week how much was going to fall into those, but it just meant that we could just prioritize smaller changes and QA tasks, before the bigger ones. And then obviously we'll have some bigger projects where a designer's on it for a whole week, but it's easier to put that on seniors and then have juniors kind of assist with the smaller tasks underneath. So Trello really helped with that. We've just changed our allocation over to a tool called Float, and that's got drag and drop allocation. So you can put in a number of tiles, which is a number of hours per task. And for each morning, the PMs just need to move the blocks of work to a different designer. And what we've done with Float is allocated everyone like a skill set. So in the morning, they can search all of the designers, like who can use InDesign, who can use Seros, who can use Vev, who can use Webflow, who can use Rive. And so again, it's just taken some of the emotion out of allocating in the morning. So it's definitely less chaotic at the moment, and we're still refining it. So more to come on that, but some days are more chaotic than others. Q4 in before Christmas is always our busiest time of year. So that's normally a struggle, but we get in more freelancers to cover most of the time.
Oh, good. And sticking with the people side of things, one of the challenges entrepreneurs face is we can grow the business to have maybe a team of somewhere 8 to 12 people, something like that, and we can keep control of that ourselves, and we can probably do that from leading and directing ourselves. But if we want to really make the leap to then having a larger organization, we've got to develop leaders behind us, and we've got to make sure that we're not in that day to day, and we've got to find a way to do it. That's a real tough transition to make. Now, you did it very quickly. What are some of the lessons you learned in doing that?
Yeah, I was involved in too much of the day-to-day, just like you said. So I'll reiterate, every other agency owner's struggle on that one. I'm probably still too much in the weeds for some of it, just because I can't let go of everything. Yeah. But I got a business coach at the start of year 2. And that I knew I needed some extra help with that, and about delegation and about choosing priorities for business planning and strategy over, oh my God, this client needs something today and we haven't got that resource in, like, what do we do? We strategically looked at setting up KPIs, and that second year. And again, we know that this is pretty good to be doing in a business year 2. Most businesses take a little bit longer to actually realize that they need to structure the business a little bit better. So we structured the business into 5 pillars. We made KPIs and OKRs for each of those 5 pillars.
So people will probably all know KPIs, OKRs, objectives and key results. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And I read a book. Normally at Christmas, when I have a bit of time off, I'll read one book, and then my head of ops does laugh at me because he's like, "Oh God, what's Hannah read over Christmas that she's going to like upturn the whole process of the whole company just from reading a couple of things?" The first book I read before getting a coach was Agencynomics, and it was how to grow your business 100K to 3 million or something like that. And so a lot of those things say, like, okay, invest in marketing, or set up these instructions for your team to know where they're setting their visions and their targets against. But I actually kind of took the book reading one step further and got a business coach. And that just helped me have someone outside of the business to help prioritize what needed to come first. And because I came from the design side, I really hate financial admin.
Right.
Hate it. My bookkeeper is still my best mate from school. And Gemma's been brilliant for that. But having Cam as a coach, we got through Action Coach, there was another guy that focused on financials. And I can remember this first meeting in January a couple of years ago, and our end of year is February the 28th. So I knew I had like 2 months to like just sort out some of my finances before my tax return was going to go through. And that just getting a coach saved me £60,000 in one meeting.
Really?
Really, yeah. And that some people are probably screaming at this, going like, well, your financial admin really was terrible if you didn't know how to save 60 grand. But there was something that, because we got paid up front with some of these enterprise retainers, and I know I'm very lucky to be in that situation, that not normally do you have people like Red Bull giving you a wad of cash to string out the whole rest of the year. But we had these kind of, bigger sums of money to spread out monthly, ongoing. And I didn't know there was this thing called deferred revenue, where if you haven't spent it yet, you use it, you journal it back into your accounts. And someone said that to me, and I was like, is that a thing? And they were like, oh God, what did you do last year? And I was like, well, luckily my retainers weren't as big then. But again, you learn, and you need expertise to come in and help your business. So having paid, I think it was like £2,000 a month or something, that whole year of coaching was paid for in one meeting. So it was definitely well worth having. And then we offered him a job. So my business coach became my head of commercial. So Cam, if you're listening, thank you very much for all the help. But yeah, so we now have a permanent coach in the business, which is helping the team with resilience training, presentation training, mindset growth, and, thinking about what your weaknesses are and turning them into superpowers. We did that with me first, and that definitely is deep rooted in the team's training that we do now, just to make sure that everyone knows what their baseline job is. And it's not to undersell that, because I think you can listen to, Simon, what's his name, Sinek, and Simon Bartlett and everybody else talk about, some people are in work just to do a job. That's also fine. They're also high achievers that want you to map out what the next 50 years looks like for them. So we're trying to find something in between where HLabs is responsible to find out what people just want to come to work and do the job. So their first target is, how do you do what's on your job spec efficiently, and you're a good team player with your team. That's you're just doing a job. You will have a job with me, continued. That's fine. The second target is more around upsell and, growth mindset for the business. Like, how can you take your job to help your particular team? So if you're a designer, like, what new ideas can you come up with for Vogue for me to sell next year? Or, what efficiencies in design systems in Figma can you come up with that's going to save the rest of the design team time? And so what we're trying to do is make sure that everyone knows what their first target is, just do your job. And the second target is, how do you help your individual team succeed those stretch targets that we've got? And then the last one is more like personal reflection on what your weakness is that you're bringing to work every day. That I'm not going to tell you what your weakness is, but if you can be self-aware to analyze what your weaknesses are, and you just take one step every day to make that better. And we made this. I obviously, I know this is audio only, but Kevin, you'll see I'm wearing a Pokemon hoodie,
yeah.
right? And I play Pokemon with my nephews every weekend, and it was this thing that we decided to make it a bit more fun to talk about our strengths and weaknesses. So we have a HLabs Pokemon card set where everyone had to write down 2 strengths and 1 weakness that they were working on and share with the team. So at the Christmas party, we handed out all of these Pokemon cards and everyone was, sharing them around. And we used AI to create the avatars in them. But it was just a really friendly way, again, about getting people to openly, especially with a young team, is getting people to admit what they're not so good at. Because I think the fear of failure and I hate throwing out there to say Gen Zs need more support, but it's true. And I think what we're trying to do with the team is just break down some of those barriers, just to say, like, okay, I'm not very good at that. And one of our team, and I know she won't mind me mentioning it, I'm not going to mention her name, but she went, empathy is my weakness. She was like, I just want to do good design. Like, why do I need to care what everyone's emotions are? But again, we said, but as a team player, you have to be able to balance that. So we're giving her support on how to pick up some of those social cues when someone needs more support than others. But her superpower is being very diligent in design, and she's a very good design director because of that. So I think it's making a bit of a laugh about what we're weak at. And I can admit on this call, I'm very bad at active listening. So I need to pause, take a breath, and listen to the question more often.
Well, no, brilliant. Well, you seem to have listened to my questions really well.
I hope.
Good, excellent. No, that's amazing. So I love that emphasis on the people, and it sounds like that coach, even though that started from a more financial aspect in a way, there's a lot that he's brought in around the people side of things. Yeah. Cam's a man, is he, or is it?
Yes, yeah, Cam's a man. Yeah, he's great. And I think the other part of that, not just through coaching, and I think which is a real kudos to the team we have. And I heard it on an interview the other day that we said, like, why is HLabs for you? We're interviewing for a new marketer at the moment. And she said, well, your team is super diverse. And I was like, that's great. So we are a remote first company. We started in COVID, so we didn't have an office. We do have a London office now, but it's not compulsory at all. It's an add-on if you want to go in.
Okay.
But for our remote team, we have 3 people in Amsterdam, 2 in India, 1 in Romania, 1 in Germany, 1 in Lisbon. We've got 2 in the Philippines now, and 1 in Canada. And what we've found is by being remote first, we've been able to hire talent globally that's still affordable for a new business. Because I know a lot of people listening will be like, well, hiring seniors is the hardest thing when you're starting out, because it feels like such a risk to be like throwing all of your money at wages when you don't know what's coming in around the corner. But hiring remotely has been a tactic that we've used to great effect, and hiring in the Philippines has been the latest part of that. So I was over in the Philippines at Christmas because I jumped on a plane and thought I'm going to meet everyone. So I've got one more place to visit. I'm going to Dublin before February 28th to meet Samir, because he's the last one of my tech crew that I haven't met in person. But I do think different ways people communicate different influences and background, and that's not just work background. I mean, some of the stories I've been privileged enough for some of my team to share with me about, how they've been brought up, what their families have gone through, like if there's certain grievances they've had to get over. Meeting people from those different backgrounds has only been more helpful for me as a person and the team around us to try and tackle problems differently, which has been really, really rewarding. So we're looking to expand that more for, if the target in the next 5 years is to get 24-hour production, so that every time zone has a team on it that can work on your project, so that even next morning doesn't become a thing. It could be the next hour we start a project.
Good. And how do you manage the hiring process remotely to make sure that you get people that will fit into the HLab culture?
We have this really nice thing. If you go to team.hlabs.co.uk, we have a video of every team member. And so the first thing you do is when you get hired, your first day, you only have 1 day to do it. You can use any tech, you can use your phone, you can use Instagram Reels, you can use iMovie. It doesn't really matter, but you have to make a video of yourself, even if it's just you sat on Zoom talking to the screen. The team started trying to outdo each other, though. They started to try and make them super creative and like different levels of output. But we have this channel of everyone explaining a bit about what they do, what they're about, what their personalities are about. And again, a bit like the Pokemon cards, it just breaks down some of those barriers about people getting to know each other. And actually, we didn't realize that we started it as an onboarding thing for team members in the team. But as soon as we started sending that to new prospects, like on a job application saying, meet the team, this is everybody. Everyone started going, oh my God, the videos are just amazing. I watched all of them. Like, this is great. And they can see where they might fit in that team of oddballs and, crazy creatives that we have. It really helped. But we use LinkedIn for hiring. We've not used recruiters until now. We've started using a couple of outsource agencies which look after the remote contracts. So one in the Philippines at the moment we're using is Bruntwork. We've also used a design agency in India called Nickel Fox, where every Christmas when we get busier, we've hired senior designers through them in India that have been brilliant. So Jagjit, shout out to you for the work you did last quarter. But and again, for that, if people are worrying about, going on to full-time payroll positions, you don't have to do that. Like, IR35 doesn't set in until you've got 10 million turnover or you've got 50 employees. So again, you can start to play with those freelance contracts a little bit more, and remote team members through some of these agencies means that it takes the stress out of hiring and letting go when you don't need the capacity anymore, because it's much more like, we've got 3 months, we need this resource, can you help us out, kind of thing, which is really, really helpful.
Super. Sounds like you've done some amazing things in a short period of time. If you had to look back on it and pick out something that maybe with a bit of hindsight you do differently, what might that be?
This is one that we learned in year 4. And I think everyone this year has felt like, anyone in digital that felt the boom in COVID, like definitely had a little bit of a crash in 2023. I feel that every agency owner I've spoken to had to make redundancies this year. I think it's just a fact. I think a lot of the bigger agencies and people on the tech side have seen huge layoffs. I mean, we only had to let go, and I say only, that it makes me sad just saying it. We had to let 3 of our freelancers go that were on like kind of 4-day or 5-day a week contracts with us. And I think it's just, to any other founder, it's about trusting your gut and making decisions earlier. I think that I kind of tried to do everything else apart from looking at the staffing thing quite early on, and we had so many people. We looked at one point our amount of on paid work versus internal work. There was only 25% of our work on paid, and then I was like, that is crazy. I can't look at those percentages anymore.
I bet Cam was doing his no.
No, I think it was all of us. Like, so it's me, head of ops, head of commercial, which is Cam, and creative director Shadi, who we promoted last year. So the 4 of us have got very different personality types. So the 4 of us we're called the decision makers at HLabs, which has helped me a lot. Just because some of us are much more more around the team. Some of us are more commercially driven. Some of us are very much like process, so that's not going to work. And so the four of us have kind of a combination of skills that's really good. But I think this summer, like, we probably should have acted a little bit sooner, but we did learn from that. And I think we've kept we were at a team size of 42, and we've pulled that down to a kind of more consistent group of people at 28 to 32, which fluctuates kind of weekly. It's a bit more manageable. But I think, we've got high aspirations for this year, but we would need to find some more kind of line managers to manage people if we extended it any more than we've got at the moment. So We'll see how it's got, and we'll work on those efficiency numbers to start with. But the growth.
If I understand that correctly, you've essentially built it so you've got a senior leadership team of three direct reports to you, but
yes.
You're all part. Yeah, good, excellent. So what's the future hold? What's the legacy you want to leave? Where do you want to be in 5 years or something like that?
It's funny because I actually wrote this down yesterday. I did like another award entry, and they always have that as one of the questions for what do you want to do 5 years? What do you want to do 10 years? I think I don't want to sell,
right.
Which is funny because like so many of the other agency owners that I spoke to, like I'm part of Agency Hackers. I've been part of Agency Nomics for a long time. I run a women in leadership group with some of the other women founders. But I think everyone's like always talking about setting up to sell. And I don't know. I don't know. I always want it to be my baby, but I would probably start to pull back on actual day-to-day operations, like on fixing some of the minor fires. I would like that to be held without me doing it, so I can focus on vision and partnerships and meeting new interesting people. But I think, next 5 years, I would like there to be at least a team of 4 people in each time zone, and that be probably Southeast Asia, around Philippines, that time zone, 1 in India, 1 in UK, and 1 in US. So like 4 teams across the globe that at least cover just, being able to hand over work one to another. And I think each of those sub teams would definitely need to be a creative lead, a project manager, a producer, and a designer. So kind of working, it's always going to be kind of centrally operated from the UK time zone. I mean, unless Americans want to start paying me loads more money, which would be great. But I think growing the team over time zones would be great. And I think Shadi, my creative director, changed our vision statement this year to be more team orientated, that we wanted a vision statement that everyone got behind. So it's creating stories that matter. And because a lot of the work we do is so much based around editorial and really amazing copy, that normally people hand us these stories and we're there to visualize and make them more engaging. But I think what we've talked about internally is that it's stories that matter to us. So it's not necessarily that we want to just work with charities or just work with environmental groups or things like that. It's about what matters to us as individuals. So we did an exercise about writing down, what we're passionate about. And, Kevin, I told you earlier, I'm going skiing tomorrow, which is a last minute thing. I love skiing. And so there was a video documentary featured on Ski Sunday last year. And I was blown away by it. It was an all-female production crew made a ski film called Nexus. And I just was blown away that even the drone pilots and the helicopter pilots were female, and skiing is such a male-dominated industry. I was like, this is amazing, especially with camera people. It's mostly men as well. So they'd done this amazing job to create this film, and I used it as this kind of lead by example moment where I contacted the art director, contacted the head of the photography, and now we're working with them. And we have 3 pro skiers that were in that film, and we're making press kits for them and we're making interactive presentations for them to get more sponsors for their YouTube series. And that was just like something I could show to the team where I was like, I'm passionate about this. This is what I watch because I love this passion. I'm not that great. I'm not very good at off-piste skiing. I can get down a hill quick, but it's something I'm passionate about. So this is the content in the field that I'm interested with. And we shared with them all of the stuff that we'd done for Red Bull. And obviously there was a mutual kind of interest there. And we've made that into revenue, which is amazing. And I think that's what I would love the team to work on, is that I know that the team want to do a lot more charity work. We work with WWF Canada at the moment, and we do that for ridiculously small margins or at cost, because it's a charity that the team feel great about. And we're trying to push the boundaries of what tech we do with them. We've just done an editorial workshop with them. And again, like finding the causes that the team want to work on just mean they're more motivated. So whether it's charity work, whether it's a sport that they're into, I know that we want to do some stuff for the London Marathon this year. One of our team is running in it, and I've got contacts at the London Marathon. So we did an exchange for an intern for we swapped designers with someone at the London Marathon last year. So again, it's finding those ways to work with content that we want to work with, and trying to get to a point where we can turn down the ones that might be well paid that are with difficult clients that you don't want to work with.
Brilliant. Very good. So you've mentioned a couple of people already, like Simon Sinek and Stephen Bartlett, but who do you look up to as a business leader? Is it the most influence?
Oh, I know the wild one. The women on Dragon's Den. I mean, Deborah Meaden, you got to love her. Really, she's a bit cutthroat. But again, like I kind of. It's really, this is going to be a joke one, right? That it's kind of an internal, because the most amount of memes that go round in the office is that there's a meme of a Devil Wears Prada where she comes out of the lift holding the magazine. And I think that there was something in that when we were working for the first year at Vogue, we found out that they weren't supposed to have interns because of that film. It's just ridiculous, right? It's so ridiculous. And we got this offer when I was at Vogue, and they said, oh, would anyone like an intern from Condé Nast College? And I was like, absolutely, yeah. Like any free resource I can have help me in my day-to-day, that would be brilliant. And so I opted for it, and they were like, we haven't had interns at Vogue because it was so like under wraps that you weren't supposed to. But they've changed that whole policy now, which is great. But there is something about that film that it's not something I aspire to be, but it's that kind of no nonsense, this is where I'm at, that I love. But obviously the respect for your team members has got to be there as well. But I think the actress, she's gone out of my brain right now what her name is, but I think that she holds herself at awards ceremonies really, really well as well. So I know that's completely left field and not business related, for the right examples, but it does make me laugh, like, because I get sent that meme all the time that they think that's who I want to be, which is not quite right.
Fantastic. Good. Well, I've had a blast talking with you, Hannah. Thank you very much indeed for coming on ScaleUp Radio today. It's been fascinating, and lots of great lessons from your experience over the last 4 years. A phenomenal journey so far, and of course wish you all the best with your future journey. If people would like to find out more about you when you get back from your skiing holiday next week, or find out more about HLabs,
I'll still be doing emails from the ski lift for sure.
Or find out more about HLabs, what's the best way for them to do that?
If you go, you can search. We come up number one on Google. If you just type in HLabs, you will find us. But it's hlabs.co.uk. So check us out. We are working on the website at the moment because we need to change our messaging to say we do websites, because we realised we made it a bit too vague. So we're working on our marketing comms at the moment. Or you can contact me on LinkedIn, Hannah Springett, and just get in touch.
Excellent. Hannah, thank you very much indeed for being my guest today.
No problem. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.